We had a great presentation tonight talking about, we often don't define what value is when we start a project. So we start talking about how much money we have to spend or the cost per square foot we want to achieve. Target value design, the first step is defining what your value is. And if you go through a process of defining, so for an owner, it's like, why am I building this project? What am I hoping to achieve from the project? And then from there, if you do a business plan, a pro forma, you can start to figure out how much can I afford to spend? So if this did everything I wanted to, what can I afford to spend? And that will tell you what often is called an allowable cost. So that's my business plan will allow me to spend this amount of money. Now, of course, I want to do better than that. So I'm going to set targets below that, but it's not just cutting my cost. I need to maintain the value that I set out to achieve the project. So how big things get done.
Yeah,
most projects, big projects, they finish over budget, they finish behind schedule. But what he adds in that most people don't talk about is they don't deliver the original intended benefit.
And I think the worst example is that nuclear power plant in Japan that never got built, never produced a watt of energy, and cost multiple hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's like one of the worst examples, but you're totally right. A lot of times, and we heard some examples today from some of the case studies, things get built and they never deliver the intended value to the people that the thing was built for.
Yeah, and I think if you pay closely, Romano Nickerson wrote an article, The Dirty Secret of Construction. And it was that even if we finish on budget and on schedule, we rarely talk about whether we delivered the original intended scope. So in a hospital, it's very common, you're over budget, so you take something out, and then you say you finished on schedule, and you finished on budget. But you don't talk about, yeah, but we didn't equip 2 of the operating rooms, and we didn't buy the MRI, right? So you've completely changed the value proposition of the project, so you haven't delivered on that value.
Yeah, I think that's really telling. And I was talking to Glenn before we were on camera, and I asked him, like, what would you encourage people to do to get the benefits of TVD? And Glenn said, just follow the process, it's free. It's a free process, but I think what we didn't talk about were the systemic things in construction that stop us from ever starting that process. From your perspective as an owner, what are some of the barriers that people don't think about when you see this really elegant, simple flow chart? What stops us even from starting that process? And Glenn said that this is contract agnostic. We can do TVD on any contract type, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. He had a caveat in there that if design is involved. So it's not target value delivery if the design is 100% done and you've bid the job, that's just cutting scope most of the time. I mean, there's value engineering maybe, but if you truly want to deliver the same value at a lower cost or more value at the same cost, you got to integrate design and construction. So the best way that I've found to do that is to be really clear, as we talked about, what your value proposition is up front. If you know what your allowable cost is, that's good. If you don't, just pick a number. Because too many times people get hung up like, well, we don't know what your target is, so we can't do any work. And so sometimes I will just make up a target to get the conversation started, and then we'll refine it. Breaking your budget up into buckets in the way, so sometimes they're called clusters, sometimes they're called project implementation teams or pits. Get groups of scopes that work together and that they have to coordinate with each other. And put those together. An easy way to do it is just take your budget and allocate line item by line item, what bucket am I gonna put that in? And then start looking at each of those buckets, and you can look at comparable project costs. You can look at, you could just set by percentage. You could look at the scope, and you start to set targets within those buckets, and you can aggregate the net target of all those buckets to come up with a target for the job. And then you start working. You start tracking it. You asked, how can it go wrong?
How can it go wrong, or how can it even not start?
So the biggest thing I see people do is they jump to what they think the end is. So they jump to the size of the project without understanding why it exists. In my world, we lease a space based on what's available, and then we back into a value that we can fit. So we're going backwards from what a square footage is instead of developing a value and then figuring out how much square footage we need to deliver that value. And we also, I think, get hung up way too much on cost per square foot.
Yeah.
So a simple example I compared 2 projects in my previous employer, and one project was 4 times the square footage of another project, and there was an argument about why we would spend 4 times the cost per square foot on this project, and we had wasted so much money. I did an analysis, I compared the 2 board presentations and what the payback time was. The one that was 4 times as much per square foot paid off in half of the time.
Oh my God.
So the value proposition of the 2 jobs was radically different. So to just compare based on a cost per square foot, you're missing the value. So I think we're real quick to jump to cost per square foot, and we get hung up on that.
And I like too that you're kind of self-taught in this area. And I think I lost track of how many billions of dollars that you've delivered using this type of framework. And from when you're working with teams that haven't done this, because this is so new, what's the value in bringing people together? Is it training that you do to get people to do this, or is it onboarding, a combination of both, or how do you get people to see the path and the process?
Baby steps. I have a tendency to try to explain the whole process, and if I had to say what I think works the best is to start with step 1, focus on that. Start with step 2. Sometimes I'll have to ask people, like, just give me 4 weeks. And at the end of 4 weeks, if you don't like it, you can throw it out. But just play my game.
Okay.
Play this game for 4 weeks. And so I make the mistake of explaining, like, the whole process. Here's what we're trying to do, and we're going to go through all these steps, and you lose people. Sounds too complicated. But if you do it 1 step at a time, it's not that complicated. You ask good questions. I could always do better in onboarding, in basic training. I think I make the mistake of assuming that we have common language.
Yeah.
Assuming that people understand what I'm talking about. People are very hesitant to speak up if they don't know what an acronym is or what a word is or have it. We had it tonight. There was a joke, a lot of people nodded, and then Glenn asked, how many people know what I was talking about? And half of the room said, I don't know. So,
but
nobody spoke up
right.
until he created the opportunity. So I think doing a little bit of training and onboarding and create some common language, do some kind of icebreaker, something just to build commonality before you jump into, like, let's solve some hard problems.
Yeah. And I think I really like, it's worth plugging Lean IPD, your site. I've used it as a resource over the years. There's not a lot of places to go to get information and case studies, and you've made available webinars, papers, even books to describe the process, and even blog posts that are small, digestible. And I still haven't read the snowball effect email, but I saw it in my feed today.
It's there.
And I was like, ooh, this is gonna be good. And I think a lot of people don't even have that awareness that these resources are available. So, I mean, myself as a practitioner, as a contractor, I'm always sharing this information. Do you share like that with people in your organization, or you kind of just put it out there and see who you catch?
It's a good question. I am careful about self-promoting, but I do find a way to share the content. The way that I've shared the content internally within my organization is through social media, where people can choose to follow or not. I've also had really good success taking people to the Lean Construction Institute annual Congress. And that's kind of like a good Kickstarter for people.
Yeah.
It gets people really jazzed up. Sometimes people are afraid of Lean, or they're afraid of terms, but more because they don't understand them. So getting them to go to a meeting or see that enthusiasm, I think, is really helpful. And then when they come back and they say, oh, you know something about this, can we talk about that? So that's been a really good icebreaker.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like, we're at a bar right now, just coincidentally, There's no drinks here yet. We're gonna have to fix that before we leave.
They were, but they're gone now.
They're gone. And one of the benefits of like what James just mentioned is that in these types of events, we can come together and talk. And that's where you and I became friends. And it was like late at night, probably well past midnight.
That was you, not me.
It was you and I, yeah. And like those types of weeks, I typically don't even sleep because we're so engaged in these conversations, and the things we talk about really bring these concepts to life. And I found for me, it's been a game changer when I go back to projects and engage, because now I have a greater sense of reality and perception, and I can perceive differences and gaps. I never would have had that if it wasn't for this social part. So I think people forget in a lot of these types of ideas, and Glenn started his presentation with some presuppositions, but there's a social component where people will bring these processes to life. And I just want everyone to know that nobody does it better than you, James. I'm not blowing smoke. He has multiple billions of dollars worth of projects. And like when I have a question about something and I come to James and ask and we talk about it, he makes it crystal clear where to go. Like these empty glasses that we got to fix.
Yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm happy to help somebody skip a step or two.
Yeah, I super appreciate it. James, is there anything else that you want to share from the event you saw today?
I just am always rejuvenated when I come to these events. I probably came to my first one 16 or 17 years ago as a project engineer. Somebody drugged me along. There are people that I work with today that I met in that first meeting. And we've done tons of projects together. Sometimes I won't work with them for 5 or 6 years. I came back, I saw a bunch of people that I've worked with in the past that I haven't seen in a while. So, it sounds cliche, but there's a lot of good friends. It's almost like a family of people. So I really appreciate that. And thanks for the plug for leanipd.com. I appreciate that. Writing, I write for other people, but I also write for myself, because when you have to write something down, it forces you to clarify your thinking. And so that writing process is almost more for me. And I'm glad that other people can participate in the process. So thank you. Great to see you as always.
Oh, always. Thank you, James.